Ladies and gentlemen, we are returning with part 2 of the little things wrong with Warzone, an incredibly well done video essay explaining all of the little things wrong with Verdansk, Caldera, the gameplay, things that have been plaguing us for years. And this creator, absolutely stunning creator, one of the best videos I've ever watched, Birder Speed, will be linked in the pinned comment and the description. I highly encourage you to subscribe to someone like this and keep encouraging absolute class content, because we reviewed the first video together as a community, and that'll be actually linked down below in the description. If you have not seen part 1, go ahead and drop everything you're doing, watch part 1, and then come back to this video, because he covers even more. Now, he's likely going to cover even more when we get into Caldera as well, because there are some things in here that he still doesn't include. So make sure to comment down below other little things that are wrong with Warzone that Birder or myself have not covered in this video. Ideally, someone from Raven will find this video and continue to make improvements on the game, because I'm a big, I'll complain about a game, but I'm going to give solutions, and I'm going to be very specific about the problems that I'm seeing. And I would encourage us as a community to do the same. Don't just scream dead game, dying game, broken game. Let's talk about express specifically what it is, so we can get that message across to the developers. But without further ado, we're going to start part 2 of the little things, an absolutely incredible
I decided
video.
to start a list that recorded what I believed were little problems with Warzone. If I died to something really silly, like not being allowed to cut my parachute, I'd note it down. If I noticed something strange, like the cases where you can't place pings accurately, I'd note them down. A couple of weeks later, and the list was far longer than expected. My first video, which was quite long, only covered about half the things I wanted to talk about. This video is for the remaining half. Many of the things discussed in my first video were pretty surface level. It wasn't hard to convince people that ziplines suck. Everyone already knew that. This time, we're going a little deeper. There will be some very obvious problems that most will agree with, but there will be many more smaller things that fewer players talk about. So if you watched my previous video and thought I was too nitpicky, this one isn't for you. But if you're interested, here's part 2.
So well done, man. You have to watch that first video if you haven't already. Incredibly well edited. All the points that he brings up. This guy knows the game in and out. He's clearly I think he put like over 3,000 hours into the game. Is I think what his last video did, or maybe it was like 800 hours, 300 matches. This guy plays a lot, or 3,000 matches.
Okay, let's get it out of the way early. It makes sense to have an animation to put on your gas mask. And it also makes sense to make it automated for players that are brand new to the game. But to not give an option to turn off this automation, especially when the animation frequently gets you killed at the end of games, is inexplicable. Just look at this timing. I come out of the gas and start shooting, and my character decides to take her gas mask off mid-fight. This couldn't have waited. Because I can no longer ADS, I go back to cover and then re-challenge. And although I'm already out of the gas, the game still feels the need to force my gas mask back on.
No, he's actually got good movement.
I guess
I didn't see it in his previous video. He's got pretty good movement.
Surprising when you realize the game prioritizes taking your gas mask off instead of opening your parachute when you're plunging to your death. Here's an idea. There's an incredibly useless button right here.
Select fire.
Let's make it the gas mask toggle. And speaking of the gas, why is there such a difference in vision clarity between those in the gas?
I lose full over this. I don't understand. And I feel like it's not hard to code either. Like, bring along with the side of the gas a set level of opacity, or, the storm does a certain amount, but this is incredibly frustrating.
Gas and those in the safe zone. When you're in the gas, you're essentially blind. But if you're in the safe zone, you can perfectly see through the gas. You're already at such a disadvantage while getting zone trapped. There's no reason the person holding you should also have the benefit of perfect vision. This next one is something everyone's familiar with. Why are fractional armor plates still a thing?
Look down at the bottom
left. If you have
left.
a damaged plate that was still providing protection, why would you remove it to put on a fresh plate, as opposed to just using the free slot to add extra armor?
Please!
This was more relevant when the game first released, since there were far fewer armor plates around. But I think it's worth mentioning with the new tempered perk, which makes every plate more valuable,
I have
and therefore
never
every
understood
fractional
this.
plate more stupid. Here's some minor points on field upgrades. Trophies are far too bouncy. Nobody is out here doing trophy trick shots, so there's no reason placing one should be this difficult. It's a somewhat similar story with sentry guns and deployable cover. except you'll have trouble placing those at all. And what's the go with field upgrades despawning when placing 2 at the same time? I can see why it happens with 2 ammo boxes. There would definitely be some gas tanking possibilities otherwise. But how would you exploit placing, for instance, an ammo box in an armor box? And if there's no unfair advantage to be gained, why do they despawn? The point here is that it's annoying to lose access to your teammate's armor box because he placed a trophy on a heli. And it's especially annoying when something like this happens.
Yup. You lose your trophy, and then right after you drive right into like an RPG or a C4 or... And I don't think that was a thing at launch. I don't think the multiple field equipment thing, I feel like that was a change after launch.
Vehicles are overpowered. The third-person view has been a problem since day one and needs a nerf. Based on the passenger view, I'm not sure that a first-person driving experience is the answer, so a third-person view may be necessary. But to give a bird's-eye view to this extent, where you can perfectly track your enemy's movements over walls, or hills, or inside buildings, is way too much. Next, trucks remain a problem in all game modes. Some custom tournaments have started banning their use altogether because every endgame just became several trucks driving around the last few zones. Not only is their health too high, it's around 3600 HP, or the equivalent of 142 bullets with the current day EM2.
I would say the same thing with fighter planes in Caldera. Like, fighter planes in Caldera need to be nerfed, and the biggest thing is making them more susceptible to small arms fire.
But the hitboxes are incredibly inconsistent. So much so that they're one of the best countermeasures against cheaters, because even aimbots struggle with these hitboxes. And if this guy was struggling, you can
102 KD.
Imagine how difficult it is for reasonable human beings. Trucks became so bad in solos that Raven were forced to reduce their spawn rate, and this certainly improved the experience. But the issue with vehicles in solos goes a little deeper, and I think rovers and SUVs can be just as bad. Here's some of the things you can do. You can, of course, run over your enemy. You can hop out at full speed and instantly start shooting.
I'm not a fan of this. There needs to be some sort of dismount animation.
You can park sideways to use Warzone's built-in laser beam mechanic. You can switch to the passenger seat and do this.
I'm kind of okay with that.
Try this next one out. Drive at an enemy, hop out close to them, slide cancel, and then shoot. Unless your opponent is really, really good, you are not going to lose the battle.
Yep.
Some players won't even shoot back.
Lost.
And you'll probably
Absolutely
win,
lost.
even if you're using the starter pistol. In solos, the vehicle exit animation, or the complete lack thereof, is, and always has been, insanely overpowered.
It's a free kill every time.
Ready to use?
Now, fortunately, with Caldera vehicles, now there's still Modern Warfare vehicles in Caldera, but with Caldera vehicles, they're easy to shoot out of. Even the truck has like much more open window hitboxes, and the SUV drives significantly slower and doesn't have a covered top. So it's a little bit easier to counter vehicles, and you can see when someone jumps out a little bit easier because you're not shooting at windows and door frames. You're actually shooting at the person, so you can see when they jump. But the same thing still applies. You can still break cameras by jumping out.
User Order Abbey made a cool post where he reversed the entry animation to show what an exit animation might look like. And I think something like this should definitely exist in solos, but I'm not convinced it would be good for duos, trios, or quads. In these modes, the exit animation is naturally less powerful. You know, hopping out on a squad doesn't really give the same results. But more
yeah, but at the same time, like, just when you're in a vehicle, you have, you know, increased cover, you have increased mobility, you're able to move faster, so it's just the responsibility of the driver to get out in a position that's advantageous. I mean, if you walk into a literal trap, that's fine. I have a problem with vehicles, how they are one shot to explosive. So for me, I don't want my entire game to be ended because of one RPG, because of one C4. Now, everyone in chat will be like, well, just equip a trophy system. I don't want my entire survivability to be reliant on finding a trophy system that destroys after 3 minutes, and if I drop another, utility, it's going to break. I think there should be a mechanic where your vehicle has a wall of health that it cannot go below. So let's say I'm at 80% health and someone throws a C4, boom, vehicle's disabled, goes to 5%. And then a second C4 or RPG or additional gunfire can cause my vehicle to completely explode. But I think I should at least have the ability to get out of my vehicle before I'm insta-killed by a single explosive. In this case, when he's talking about, you know, maybe not in duos, trios, quads, I think it needs to be consistent across all game modes, and just the driver needs to put himself in a good position to get out from cover.
Importantly, as it stands, it's not hard for a team to shoot people out of SUVs or rovers, and adding a prolonged exit animation would make it a borderline free kill every time someone drives past your squad. I don't think we would want to add features that discourage people from driving vehicles altogether. At least,
like his entire game is over with no chance to react.
Every game mode that's not solos. Let's briefly touch on the maneuverability of vehicles, which isn't always the best. They get stuck too easily, with part of this being map design. Why do trucks get stuck everywhere? Why is this rock blocking this exit? And part of this being non-destructible terrain.
I do have to say the Caldera map, the vehicles are slower, but they don't get stuck as often. There's more all-terrain capability, even though they're slower.
Why can't big trucks run over small trees? Or wooden chairs?
I hated those.
Or, you know, shovels in the ground. These two fences are identical.
Yes! And there were fences that were destructible earlier, and then after an update they weren't, like the ones over in like Rivertown by the ice houses.
Why can I only drive through one of them? The vehicle flipping is more annoying, because it seems to always happen at the worst times.
Like over here in this neighborhood, there were some fences over here that used to be destructible and now they're not.
Strangely, I recall that in the first few months following Warzone's release, they never used to flip. You could drive off pretty much anything and your vehicle would stay upright. And correct me if I'm wrong, but assuming my recollection is correct, the devs at some point updated the game's physics, making it much easier for vehicles to flip. And they also added a bomb that automatically detonates when this happens.
Yep.
And if all that's true, I think it was a bad update. Maybe it's more realistic for a vehicle to flip when driving off a cliff, but now there's so many cases where they flip when they definitely shouldn't.
Well, and this game isn't about realism.
I think the physics were way better before.
This is an arcade shooter battle royale. If you want realism, go play Escape from Tarkov. Whenever people complain about realism in Call of Duty, they don't realize the game that they're playing. Automatic health regeneration, zero recoil on guns. I'm not even going to get into that discussion. If you use realism as a argument for Call of Duty, you're wrong.
Lastly, I want to touch on a specific problem I've always had with vehicles that I've never heard anyone mention. And when I searched it up, I only found a single Reddit thread with a single like discussing the issue. Whenever I exit a vehicle, there's a good chance that my character will automatically throw a tactical grenade.
Only on controller.
I'm not pressing the button in these clips. Since Warzone's release, I've always run a heartbeat. Not because I'm paying tribute to my 12-year-old self, but because no matter what throwing tactical I put in my class, I just automatically lose it when I exit a vehicle. If anyone knows anything about this, please let me know.
Me and Joe were just venting about that the other day. Please go to audio. I'm gonna rip audio a new one. Now below my screen is audio.
Every Warzone player has in common, it's that we absolutely love our loadouts. So much so that pretty much every player, in pretty much every game they've ever played, has spent the first few minutes looting just to get their hands on one.
RIP. Not anymore.
They're one of the best parts about Warzone. Unfortunately, there's a few cases where you're unnecessarily prevented from getting your loadout. Let's go through them. First, this game's spawning preferences aren't great. Sometimes you spawn directly over your loadout, and sometimes you spawn 1700 meters away.
Yup.
The game should be smart enough to realize I don't want to spawn here. I want to spawn here.
Yep, please.
And if it's not that smart, why doesn't it just let us choose whether we want to spawn over our loadout,
passionate about this one,
or over our previous loot, or over our teammates?
So you're saying that you should have an option to choose spawn over your previous death location, spawn over your loadout, or spawn over your teammates. That'd be an interesting decision that you could actually toggle after you're winning your gulag or getting bought back. Well, I think getting bought back, you should always spawn over the buy station. But winning your gulag, I think, would be an interesting decision where you actually get to choose where you come back.
Next, for at least a year or so following Warzone's release, the free loadouts would land in inaccessible areas.
It doesn't happen as much.
I can't remember the last time this happened to me, so I think it's been fixed.
There's a couple Caldera ones that spawn
I'm hoping
under
it doesn't
the
take
map.
nearly as long for loadouts to stop dropping in spots like this. or this, or off the map.
You could get on that rooftop if you watch my jump
Every
spots
now and
video.
then, you inevitably pick up the wrong loadout. This is the worst. You expect to pick up your fully decked out Farah, and you somehow end up with a 25 round C58. How this weapon was even in one of your loadouts, we'll never know. But you should be able to go back and get the correct class. As long as you don't try to cheese a snipe cross map with a HDR, would it be so bad if we had a 10-second grace period to go back and change our loadout? What I find most annoying about this one is that
That'd be a good mechanic where like you can pick it up, but if you, I want to say so much as aim down sight, but definitely if you take a shot or place a utility or do anything, you can't use that loadout or you're locked into that loadout. That'd be an interesting mechanic.
if you play on controller, picking up the wrong loadout kind of isn't your fault. Do you remember when they brought in the RCXD killstreak? They placed it at the bottom of the buy station, below the loadout, meaning that the typical actions to buy a loadout on controller, up XX, no longer worked.
I feel like whoever coded this didn't play the game.
Everyone was accidentally buying the RCXD car. It changed a year's worth of muscle memory, and it was so universally hated that Raven had to change it back. It's kind of the same thing when picking up your loadout. For some reason, the game remembers what class you previously grabbed. If you pick up your second class, the next time you open a loadout drop, your marker will start on your second class.
Yep. It'll even do the same thing. If this class that you select in the pregame lobby as you're floating down and smacking in the pregame lobby, if you select that class, that'll be the class that will first be available when you touch a loadout that game.
Your fifth, it'll start on your fifth next time. This doesn't make any sense.
Shout out to him for using the Ram 7, by the way.
Depending on when you grab it, the same actions don't always give you the same class. And so when you need to grab your loadout really quickly, it's very easy to make a mistake.
Cannot stress how well edited this video is. Make sure to drop a like
anyone
here, and of course subscribe to him.
dying.
I'll have him. I'll remind you at the end of the video to make sure to drop a sub to him.
And they're not given the chance to fight back. From time to time, this also happens at buy stations. Let's say you want to buy a precision. I've played this game a lot, so I know I have to press up 6 times and X twice. It still takes me more than a second and a half.
I didn't know that.
The problem is, this game's time to kill is really, really fast.
That's disgusting. Half a second.
And this was an optimal scenario. For most players, it'll take far longer. Put differently, if you get caught using a buy station, you're pretty much dead.
Not to mention in Caldera right now, there's a bug where if you touch the buy station, your screen will freeze up for literally 10 seconds.
And with some of the places they're located, it happens more than you'd think. With that said, I think everyone would appreciate more efficient buy station navigation. In solos, armor plates are the fastest item you can buy. Open the buy station, press X twice, and you're done. It takes less than a third of a second. If we had hotkeys, you could buy every item as quickly.
This is brilliant.
You want that
I have never thought of this before.
precision? Press L2 twice. You want to buy all your teammates back without sacrificing your life? Press square twice to use the buy all function. Of course, they would be fully customizable. I would probably use something like this, but players could use as many as they'd like, or they could avoid using them altogether. What about the items themselves? We've already covered plates, gas masks, field upgrades, and loadouts. What about self-revives? I've never liked the fact that they're infinitely reusable, but I wouldn't change them because they're far too important for maintaining one's sanity when playing against these quick-scoping, no flinch, sometimes no glint snipers.
Yep.
To further aid efficiency, advanced UAVs should have their own slot, and they should also show what level an enemy's fighting on. If you're in a building with multiple levels, it's generally preferable to have a UAV instead of an advanced, because the UAV will indicate whether your enemy is above or below.
Shout out Bad Boy Beeman. If you guys weren't aware, whenever you pop a UAV, the red dot will have an arrow below indicating that that player is lower than your current elevation, an arrow above if it's above your current elevation, and an arrow or no arrow if it's at your current elevation. The advanced UAV doesn't give you that information.
Advanced UAVs cost 3 times as much. There shouldn't be a disadvantage in comparison to the regular UAV. The ability to buy your teammates back might be the single best feature in Warzone. It only has one problem. After your second death, the game starts loading your teammates' POV so you can start spectating.
Forever.
And while it's loading, even though you're already full dead, your teammates cannot buy you back. they have to wait 10 to 15 seconds for you
I
to
never
fully
understood
load
why
into
this
their
was.
POV. I don't think anyone would expect the game to have instant loading times, but if it's going to be 15 seconds before I'll be able to load back in and respawn, okay, but don't make my teammate wait 15 seconds to buy me. Let them buy me in advance and move away from the buy station. Also, what's with the ridiculous loading viewpoint? While loading your teammate's POV, you get a bird's eye view of the spot you died, and you're able to tell your teammate exactly where their enemy is located. This should be removed altogether. And finally, airspace too crowded.
I hate
Look,
this.
if it didn't exist, our recon friends would just be spamming even more airstrikes in the final zone. Endgames would start to resemble the ones with those infinite cluster strike cheaters. So it's a necessary feature, but I would change one thing. Take this example. I self-revive behind this rock and get precisioned. I'm one shot, so if I move from this rock, I'm dead. My only way out of this is using my own airstrike to make the other squad move. But since this guy precisioned me, I'm not allowed to use my own. The airspace too crowded feature should exist within teams, as it does now, but it shouldn't exist between teams. A 30-minute game.
I couldn't agree more. So he's saying there should be like a timer for your team, and if anything, they could put the timer like in here. I guess you can kind of get a little bit of a sense with a mini map. You can see when the vehicles are up, but you shouldn't be punished.
Game
because
shouldn't be
someone else...
decided by whoever uses their airstrike first.
Exactly.
Does anyone else get the phantom red dots? You know, the bug that happens so frequently that you're repeatedly going to the map only to see people fighting 2,000 meters away?
Yep.
The fact that players are fighting on the opposite side of Verdansk isn't useful information. I'd prefer not to see it. Also,
Does anyone know what causes that? Is there like a specific gun that causes that?
how haven't glitched vehicles been fixed yet? When you see a red SUV, someone should be driving it.
I
But
haven't
when
seen
you go to
this
check
as
it out,
much.
no one's there. It's just another bug that I'm surprised hasn't been patched by now. What about using the map and driving simultaneously? I remember when I first drove a vehicle in this game, I was annoyed that I couldn't accelerate without the map fully zooming in. On a PlayStation controller, if you use L2 and R2 to aim and shoot, this isn't a problem, since the zoom in and out controls for the map are L1 and R1. However, if you prefer to aim and shoot with L1 and R1, the map controls remain the same.
It also happens if you're trying to jump off of a ledge. So let's say you're jumping off a really tall building, you pull your parachute, and you want to hit L1 so you can do the free look and like side glide. The second you pull up your map, that L1 will start zooming out your map. So you can't like mark exactly where you want to go while parachuting and free looking.
The buttons are independent of however you choose to remap your controller. So if you prefer to shoot with R1, you cannot accelerate without the map fully zooming in. And if you prefer to aim with L1, you cannot zoom out without your car slowing down. It's another one of those really obvious day one problems that never got fixed. Let's talk about Warzone's marking system. Sometimes the marks you place get in the way, meaning you need to remove them to see better while fighting. And the same is true for your teammates' marks. But one obvious feature the game is missing is the ability to remove them yourself. If my teammate's mark's in the way while I'm fighting, I have to ask them to stop what they're doing and remove it manually. I can't remove it myself. Why not? Also, marking isn't precise enough. If you want to mark the direction of an enemy but there's a bit of loot below you, it'll almost always mark the loot. It's also very difficult and sometimes impossible to mark things through doors. If marking was just that bit more precise as to where your crosshair's pointing, it would make communicating with your teammates that little bit easier.
I think they did that for like new players. They were trying to help them out and be like, hey, I think I know what you're looking at. And they send out like a column, and whatever it hits first, it locks onto. But playing an FPS, like a precision game, if it takes them a second longer to get their ping just perfect.
A related point is about precisions and clusters.
It'll be fine.
I don't know what this precision targeting system is all about. And I certainly don't know what's going on with this green laser. But it's way too easy to place your airstrikes in the wrong spot.
They fixed that with Caldera. Now the Caldera cluster strikes are with a binoculars, but they still can bite off on trees. It should be a regular
crosshair. And since we're all capable of aiming anywhere on the screen, there'd be fewer mistakes. The solution wouldn't be perfect. You would still, for instance, place them on tree branches, but it would have to be better than what we have now. Since we're far removed from the times where it took 3 minutes to pick up an armor satchel, I'd say Warzone's
Are we? I still think Satchels should be auto pickup.
looting is quite good. In fact, aside from still showing the wrong guns, which is really a non-issue, and the cases where loot gets stacked directly on top of each other, which is more common.
I feel like they should add a buffer like Fortnite does, where guns, when they're on top of each other, there's like a proximity where they just start to like, you know, if they're like right on top of each other, they just forcibly like have a little force field around them and eventually get separated.
There's not much to complain about, but I still think there's some room for improvement. There are some minor points, like why am I still looting pistols off the floor? What's the point of having ground loot pistols which are so much worse than the one you spawn with? If it's so important to have players using a variety of pistols, they should have just changed the starter pistol more than once since Warzone's release. Also, if you get full plates from looting a satchel when you don't already have one, you should also get full plates when you do. You should be encouraged to, and not punished for, playing aggressively and using up a lot of your plates.
I agree with that. I think you should like be able to break down a satchel and break down the satchel and get like 8 plates.
I can see why they did this. You wouldn't want players with 6 plates taking all the satchels, but I think there's a better solution. If you have any spare plates when looting a satchel, you should automatically drop those plates. Same thing with armor boxes. There would be fewer satchels lying around, but there would be far more plates.
Yeah, so like if you had 0 plates and you broke down a satchel, it would bring out 8 individual plates. Or if you had 2 plates and you picked up a satchel and you already had a satchel, it would give you 6 plates, but then put 2 more plates on the ground.
I think that's a decent trade-off to allow players with empty satchels to get some more plates. Automatic looting is really cool. The fact that you don't have to loot plates or pieces of ammo manually is incredibly convenient.
That's one thing when people reminisce about Blackout and talk about how amazing Blackout was. I remember always picking up and dropping ammo, attachments, silencers, weapon-specific attachments. Like, Warzone did us pretty nice by not having to balance all that. We can just pick up ammo automatically.
But I've never understood why this convenience isn't utilized more frequently. For
Gas
instance,
masks.
why aren't gas masks auto-loot? Unless you can see the future and know for certain that you'll die to the gas mask animation, everyone would always prefer to have one.
And he mentioned the gas mask animation in the previous video. Don't worry, we hate that. Or was that earlier in this video? It may have been earlier in this video. Yeah, it was earlier in this video.
And so, like plates, they should be auto-looted when you run over them. And for added convenience, when you already have one, you should automatically loot ones that are more durable than your own.
That'd be incredible.
The gold gas mask lasts around 24 seconds, and the regular one around half that long. So the preference relationship looks something like this. You could make a similar argument for auto-looting satchels, kill streaks, and even field upgrades. I'd also like to see some form of auto-looting after you respawn. When you re-land on your body, it takes forever to loot both your weapons, your armor satchel, your gas mask. You get the point. It would be really cool if the game remembered your items after respawning, meaning you could just auto-loot everything by running over your body.
I mean, that would be nuts.
This means you would never have to spend...
Now I feel like our aspirations are getting a little too high. Let's start with the surface level stuff here. Can we get some of the basic stuff
40
done?
seconds scouring through piles of loot just to find your MP5.
We need this guy on the team for like 2 years to get some of this stuff done.
And finally, these respawning crates from Rebirth would be a great addition. As the Verdansk map has gotten older and older, it's become increasingly difficult to find any loot mid to late game. You want to land on this building on the outside of Lumber? It's probably looted. This building on the outskirts of Military? Probably looted. Now this won't matter as much with the new map, but a few months later, the same thing will happen. Players will become so familiar with where everything is, and they'll be so good at looting, that it'll be so difficult to find anything after respawning.
Audio.
Let me start this section with what is, I believe, an unpopular opinion. I don't think Warzone's footstep audio is that bad.
Disagree.
It used to be a big problem.
This is one of the best videos. Jack Frag's video right here was an incredible video. Basically, what Jack Frag's video talked about was the occlusion that made footsteps harder to hear if you had windows, doors, buildings in the way, which, yes, is more realistic, but you shouldn't have to break open every window to hear footstep audio.
I remember watching a Jack Frag's video a while back that proved this. But a few updates later, and I'm pretty confident that even with my $100 headset, I hear almost all of the footsteps. An unfortunately relatable example of good footstep audio is with our old friend. Whenever I get killed by dead silence, I can pretty much call it out every time before I see my kill cam. I know it's dead silence instantly because I was expecting to hear the footsteps, because I almost always hear the footsteps.
I disagree. I still think footstep audio is pretty bad, and I feel like it's even worse in Caldera because of all the elevation, because I think that same technology is still in use where if two people are on one side of a hill, right? Let's say my head is the hill, my giant forehead, and you've got two people on the other side of the hill, even if they're right next to each other, it's like you don't hear them until the second that they crest over the hill and you've got line of sight. By the time I have line of sight, I'm already dead because the time to kill in this game is incredibly quick. We need to have like an audio system indifferent of that. I mean, we're playing a battle royale with an incredibly quick time to kill. I will give up great audio if you give me Iron Trials, but time to kill is way too quick in this game. What happens for me and what happens for so many of us is the reaction when we die and we don't hear someone is one of three things. Either one, we die and we're like, what? Oh, dead silence. And then we lose full over dead silence. The second option is like, what? He had to have dead silence. And then you look and he doesn't have dead silence and you just lose full. And he's like full sprinting. The only other scenario where it's actually kind of okay, and I'll just call you a bot, is if you're like actually crouch walking or aim down sight walking the entire way. And that's, you're giving up mobility for stealth, which I think is fair. Frustrating, but fair.
Now, if so many people have such trouble with Warzone's audio, why does everyone complain about dead silence?
Because it compounds the problem.
If you can't hear footsteps to begin with, dead silence isn't a problem, right?
No, it's because I rarely hear footsteps, and when I do, it saves my life. The rest of the times when I don't hear it, I don't need something else making the problem even worse.
Competitive Warzone players are an even better example. If you're firmly in the camp of thinking there's a big problem with the footstep audio,
all of these players complain about the audio.
I'd strongly recommend you go and watch some of these plays for a few hours. If you haven't ever watched any of them, you'll literally be blown away with how well they're able to use the audio to know exactly where everyone is. With all that,
on occasion, yes, most of the time, yes, but when it doesn't happen consistently, it's still frustrating.
Said, I'm not saying it's perfect. There are occasions where you just don't hear enemy footsteps. And the vertical audio. Plain and simple. Warzone's vertical audio sucks. There can be an enemy sprinting on a floor just a few meters above you, and you'll be unable to distinguish whether those footsteps are above or below. It makes fighting in buildings with multiple floors a complete nightmare.
Nice automatos there. I think what they can do to solve that, and I believe it's what Fortnite did, where they changed the pitch. So you can hear the type, right? So if someone's walking on wood, you expect to hear like, a wood sounding footstep. But then if someone's above you, it's not like, tunk, 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 tunk. It's like tink, 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 tink. And then it's below you, tunk, 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 tunk. So there's like a pitch based off of their elevation that helps give you that vertical audio information.
I also think there's a few questions to be asked about Warzone's general audio design. Do we need airstrikes to be so loud? Do we need so much ambient noise? The creaks in the houses. The wind noises on these tarps that sound exactly like footsteps. Do we need breathing to sound like this? And most importantly, do we need dead silence?
No!
It's been such a problem for such a long time that I'm beginning to think people attribute it to the general notion that the footstep audio is horrible.
They both are.
And I think if it was removed, as it should be,
dead silence and stopping power. Wow.
You'd see far fewer complaints. This section is a small collection of things that didn't fit into other categories. Things like, I would like the ability to actually see when I'm playing. You shouldn't get rewarded for ADSing a door 3 meters away with an RPG. When someone leaves the game when they're about to die, the person shooting at them should get the kill.
No.
And when I die, I would like to see my kill cam. Not once every 3 or 4 deaths. Every single time.
Yeah, I don't know
in
why.
In the gulag, it would be nice if the
like where you die and you can't get your kill cam, which is especially annoying when you're dealing with cheaters.
Fights were fair 1v1s, not 1v1s plus callouts. It would also be nice if so many gulags weren't decided by whoever hits their stun.
Well, that's just a problem with stuns, which we talked about in a previous video. I think gulag should be one-on-ones with no callouts, but on top of that, they should have more than like 2 or 3 set gulags across the map. I understand they design it and they put the gulags underneath the map, but they need to like add more lobby queues. That way you're not sitting there 4 rounds until you fight. 3 rounds until you fight. 2 rounds until you fight. I think it'd be a badass mechanic if there were team wipes, and let's say a full team of 4 gets wiped and a full team of 4 gets wiped. They have arenas that are like gunfights where it's a 4-on-4 gulag and the whole team gets eliminated. But that's just a dream. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Another game I sometimes play is NBA 2K. And if you think Warzone's got problems, this game's in another realm entirely. One problem is its servers. It's not uncommon to have sessions where you lag out once every few games. And because your internet wasn't at fault, you can immediately rejoin the same server you were just playing in, head to the same court you were just playing on, and watch your own character, now being controlled by an AI, play out the rest of the game. You cannot join back in and start playing, even though you're right there. Now this is NBA 2K. I wouldn't expect them to think of adding a reconnect feature, and even if they did, I certainly wouldn't expect them to be capable of implementing it. But surely we can hold Call of Duty to a higher standard. With all the problems players have had disconnecting from games, how do we not have the ability to reconnect?
I tweeted about this months ago. It's like one of my most viral tweets where I'm like, hey, we've got dev errors, disconnects. Like, I understand dev errors are very difficult to figure out when you're dealing with multiple different GPU, CPU configurations on multiple different platforms. People haven't updated drivers, updated Windows. You've got PS4, PS4 Slim, PS4 Pro, Xbox, Xbox Series X, Xbox Series X, right? A lot of stuff to truly optimize this game is a huge challenge. But what we could do is allow a reconnect feature, which would ease a lot of that frustration.
How amazing would it be if after losing connection, you didn't have to wait 15 minutes for your teammates to finish the game before you can play again? You could reconnect to the servers, be prompted to rejoin your game, load back in, and then get brought back by your teammates. A reconnect feature would be so incredibly well received. So there it is. 2 videos, over 50 minutes, many little things. But let's briefly touch on the things I didn't cover. The most notable omission was Rebirth Island, and this was simply because I haven't played it enough. I like this mode, and once I play it more, I'm sure I'll have enough ideas for it to warrant its own shorter video. Custom games were also omitted. I haven't played any of these, but I've watched a lot of custom tournaments, and there are so many things Raven could do to make these better.
And the sad thing is, COD Mobile has everything we want in Warzone. The mobile game. They've got custom lobbies. They've got custom lobby codes to where you can just join in based off of a code and a password. You don't need to be friends with everyone. They've got a spectator system. They have a scoreboard. After you finish the match, the lobby doesn't disband. It all stays together. The production value on these tournaments would go through the roof if we did what we do on the mobile game.
More generally, there are so many things Raven could do to improve Warzone's competitive scene for both players and spectators alike.
Please.
Again, there's probably enough here for its own video.
There is. There is.
I could have also touched on the playlist rotations. Could they add new modes without always taking away people's favorites? And why am I yet to see Doc play solos with proximity chat?
I mean, I want proximity chat, but you would have to have a reporting system that would be pretty phenomenal, that you could instantly report someone just because people suck behind mics. Yeah.
How has this never been a limited?
But I will say with limited time modes, why are we, like, for the longest times going through droughts of no content, no updates, no new guns, no new metas, and we're still holding off things like buybacks, which are, you know, a community favorite, and Iron Trials, a community favorite.
To time mode. And what about all the comments? A few of these weren't too helpful. If I could just turn off a setting, I probably wouldn't still be dying like this.
No! You can turn off auto mantling, but it still does the same thing. It does nothing to turn off auto mantle.
But a lot of you made really great points. A few of which I had never thought twice about.
Let's see. The sun, glare, and haze. You talked about that. When you get downed in a Bertha and you're running a riot shield, you lose it. Oh, well. When no one is annoyed by how many pings hide your view. Yep, you talked about that. Ping opacity and the ability to remove them. When in the gas, you can't see very well. Yep, you covered that. It forces you to revive your teammate no matter what. Get your loadout. Nope, you need to revive your teammate first. That'll happen if I'm like trying to shut a door or trying to reload and my teammate's right there. It'll prioritize that over pressing square on anything else. Gas mask animation, he covered. Why is there such a long delay when I'm picking up a loadout? I don't think there's much of a long delay, honestly. Inconsistency with choppers crashing into each other. Oh, like if two choppers like crash into each other, sometimes one gets smoked and the other one doesn't take any damage. They should have a buy all option. He covered that as well.
Many comments made it into this video, and there were some that brought up points I wasn't aware of.
So, ladies and gentlemen, down below, just to help him out, comment things down below that have not been covered in part 1 or part 2. Once again, if you're watching this and you have not watched part 1, that'll be linked in the description. Help him out for creating new content, because this is incredible. And I'm going to remind you once again when we reach the end to go over and subscribe to him. But comment down right now and let us know what else is still broken and be constructive about it.
There were also many smaller points that I wrote down but didn't include. Things like, why do I have to wait for the dead silence timer to run out before I can pick up another field upgrade?
Yes.
Why does the countdown timer sometimes not start until the lobby is already full?
And then we wait for another 60 seconds.
Why can't you move over downed players?
So frustrating.
Why is there a huge delay between switching seats and when you're able to exit a heli? Why do I have to redo all my settings after every big update?
And that's actually a pretty quick solution that can just store on your local files.
The best example of a collection of less thought about problems is a pastebin I was sent by Twitter user Diego Fountains. It covers everything from standard complaints like weapon melee, to ideas for weapon balancing, to smaller things like the uselessness of the play again feature. There's a lot of great ideas here. I've linked it below if anyone wants to read. And finally, the bigger problems. The ones we'll all be closely watching when the new map arrives. The
weapon balance, perk balance. Perks have stayed the same for the most part. It feels like Ghost is a necessity. More people are rocking Ghost instantly because of how abundant money is. So instead of people getting ghosted in round 5, everyone's getting ghosted in round 1 when loadouts drop. Weapon balance they're actually really responsive on weapon balancing. Now, the last week, 2 weeks as they've been on holidays, not so much. But the first weeks have actually been really promising with how quick they've been with weapon balancing.
Really controversial ones.
Skill-based matchmaking. Dude, I will fight the toughest players in the world if it's on a rank system where I'm getting rewarded for playing against the best in the world, and it's giving me a rank to prove that I can, be among the best. And there's a reward for that. But when I'm playing pubs and I'm playing with friends who may not be as good as I am, and now all of a sudden they're thrown into my lobbies and they don't want to play with me anymore because they can't enjoy the experience, or I'm stuck using every single meta gun in the game because skill-based matchmaking is so tough that I need to run perfect meta or dang near perfect meta guns to compete, it ruins the casual experience. Every game feels like a competitive game. Aim assist. I mean, I'm a controller player. I'm a keyboard and mouse player. I play both. I feel like aim assist is pretty dang OP, especially rotational aim assist when it turns your turns your entire person for you. I get, boom, good centering, aim down sight. It should stay. But if someone swings hard on you, you should have to track, not just put a little bit of left stick in there to where it'll automatically rotate for you. Rotational aim assist is pretty nuts.
And the ones we're hoping won't be a problem.
Console versus PC. I feel really bad for console. I don't feel too bad for last gen console, I'll be honest. PS4, Xbox 360. Just because that's just the way it's been for the world has to move forward and the technology has to move forward, and you're going to be at a disadvantage. But next gen, not only not having FOV, but also dealing with all the graphical errors is pretty unfortunate. Obviously, the developers have all this incredible technology they want to utilize, but when you're getting this technology for PS4, PS5, Xbox 360, Series X, PS4, PC, and every different graphics configuration of a PC, it's tough to optimize.
I didn't really...
And then cheaters have been a heck of a lot better with Ricochet. It's not perfect. It'll be a constant battle back and forth, and now it's a legal battle. Activision just came out tonight as I'm recording this video that they are suing the owners of engine owning. So shout out to everyone that thinks that it was a conspiracy theory that Activision created their own cheats to sell money. Sure, guys, sure. You're subbed to the wrong channel. But no, I'm actually really excited how well Ricochet is working. It's not perfect. As with Valorant, Apex, Counter-Strike, it's always going to be a battle back and forth, but they're doing a dang good job.
Talk about any of these, at least certainly not to the depth they're warranted. Perhaps a future video is in order. Despite all these, Warzone is still my favorite game, And I'm sure that sentiment holds true for a lot of you guys that made it this far into the video. But ignoring everything else, just imagine how good Warzone would be if they just looked a little closer at the little things.
And so many of these little things aren't massive overhauls that take a lot of time. It's flipping switches, making changes that can happen overnight. Dead silence, stuns, automantle. Yeah. Without going over the past 2 videos. But ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up the little things part 2. Once again, I will have it linked in the pinned comment and the description. I want to see this guy's sub count go through the roof. Very rarely do you see a small creator put in truly intentional effort to create profound content, and that's what Birder has done. He's provided 2 incredible videos for here at the channel, and we need to reward that. Go over there, drop him a subscription, and comment down below the future things that you think he should cover, because he's going to cover even more of this. I DM'd him. I got his permission to review both of these videos. He is still active, and so I guarantee you he's going to be working on stuff for Caldera. Let's reward this effort and go over there and show him some love, because I really enjoyed it. If you guys enjoyed this style of video from me, where we kind of had this conversation about all things good and bad with Warzone, make sure to drop a like on this video. Subscribe if you want to see more from me. And make sure to follow me over on Twitch if you want to catch all of this live. If you have any questions for me, that's the best place to ask it, to hang out, watch me compete, and to watch me make the content that makes it onto this channel. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll catch you all in the next one. Go support my boy, Birder. Peace.